What's more fun than playing in the dirt? Well, today we're building a new garden from the ground up. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned as we garden smart.
These moments of beauty and relaxation are brought to you by Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs. Our goal is to leave you free to just enjoy your garden. Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs can be found at local garden centers across the country.
Memphis Wood Fire Grills with our patented IntelliBurn technology and convection oven cooking. Sear a steak, roast vegetables, bake cookies, or smoke meat. Memphis Wood Fire Grills.
DRAM has been providing gardeners with professional equipment for over 80 years. DRAM products feature 9 water patterns and are designed to nurture your plants with a shower of rain. DRAM for lawn and garden, available at garden centers near you.
You have to rely on your gear. The way it feels, the way it does exactly what you need it to do. The F-Pace, how Jaguar makes it SUV.
The most important part of gardening success is the part of the garden that's right beneath our feet. Soil is the life of the garden and the conduit through which all the water and nutrition that our plants need flows. All too often this critical component is overlooked and our plants struggle. Let's grab our shovels and take a look at what goes into a great garden soil. The most important thing you can do with a new garden or with existing soil is make sure that your soil is right before you even get started. So on this site, what we basically had was the very typical, more compacted red clay, very, very little loam, very little sand. So we went in here, tilled it up, got as many of the rocks and the roots, all of that out. So now we've already got a pretty nice soil from a friability standpoint. So it's nice, soft, and fluffy. But we've got to amend it. We've got to make sure that we're building a strong foundation and a great canvas for all these amazing plants that we're going to put in. So what I want to go back in here with is a soil amendment that's a blend, 60% of aged milled pine bark. And then I want to use a cow manure to add in like a lot of really, really nice stuff. There's great nutrition in this, nutrient holding capacity. Plants love it. So my favorite is black cow. We used about 30% black cow in this mix. And then I did about 10% sand. So just to make sure we've got really good drainage. All of that went down on top of our already tilled up, more like red clay soil. So we've got about 2 inches of this blend that we then tilled into the soil to a depth of about 6 inches. And so you can see what we have right here is this really, really rich, beautiful, dark brown, almost blackish garden soil. And that's because we went to the extra steps of using these soil amendments. Our plants are going to thrive. Just wait and see. Give it about 1 month. They're going to look amazing. Every year there's new tools and gadgets and almost anything you can imagine for the gardener, and I love trying them out. But also there's these old standards that I don't think any gardener can truly do without. This is my Mantis tiller I've had for over 10 years, and it's been worth every single penny. It still cranks up on the first pull every single spring, and I don't know of a machine that does a better job of giving you the perfect till every single time, especially for smaller spaces. My garden's not super large, and so this fits into really, really tight spaces and does an incredible job. This one's got the Honda 4-stroke engine on it. I think it's worth actually getting the one with a little more power. It makes quick work of a space. I tilled up this whole area right here under 10 minutes. It's ready to go to plant. So I would say that for the serious gardener, definitely look into getting a great tiller. These little high-speed ones, they're where it's at.
For many gardens, installing metal edging makes a huge difference. Not only does it establish clean, attractive lines, but it also keeps our garden soil from being washed away by the rain. I found it quite easy to install, actually. First, we want to use an edging shovel to make a fine trench for the edging to sit in. From there, we want to use a piece of wood to hammer the edging into the trench to the desired depth. Lastly, we'll install the stakes to hold everything in place. It's a great afternoon project that does wonders for the garden.
One of my favorite new tools is the power planter. I've dug thousands and thousands of holes over my lifetime as a gardener, and you would think that we would have upgraded the shovel at some point many, many years ago. Well, in fact, we finally have. So one of the downsides to digging holes with a shovel is that you leave slick sidewalls oftentimes on the hole that you dig, and that makes it a little bit harder for the roots to integrate into the native soil. What I love about the power planter is that it digs a really nice, fluffy, loose hole that you're able to easily plant. It's way faster than using traditional tools. It's also better for the plants. You get better soil integration. The root systems are going to grow into your soil so much faster, and then they get a head start. Today, we've got hundreds of holes to dig. We've got this landscape makeover that we're right in the middle of, but for jobs small or large, this really is the perfect tool. So today, we're going to be using our 6-inch auger, and it goes on this large DeWalt. So it's super easy to set up. We basically just slide it onto the shaft here. You got these pins that go through here with cotter pins that hold it on. Just make sure your battery's charged up and you're ready to start digging holes.
When it comes to proper planting, we need to consider what environment our root system is ultimately going to be happiest with and do our best to accommodate it. For most plants, they're going to perform best with a nutrient-rich soil that also is not too compact. Compaction frustrates the root's ability to integrate well into the new soil and slows the plant's growth. This is important to remember when we dig the holes for our plants. Having a looser hole in a well-tilled soil instead of one with slick sidewalls from a shovel that is dug in hard, compacted soils makes a big difference. That's why it's also important to remember not to pack the soil too firmly around the plant when placing a plant in the hole. The fill dirt should be firm enough to stay in place and not allow for large air pockets. It's also very important to make sure our plants are planted at the correct height. I've seen so many plantings fail because the plants are planted too low and the roots become starved for oxygen. I like to plant my plants anywhere from ½ inch to 1 inch above grade and pull the loose fill dirt up to that level. If the root ball is hard and root bound, it's also a good idea to gently loosen up with our hands before planting. Now that we've got our plants installed, we want to make sure that we water them in thoroughly and check on them every day, especially in the first couple of weeks. Ideally, we'll maintain our plants on the moist side of dry for optimum results. After a long day of gardening, I love retiring to my front porch to enjoy the spectacular view. This is where having comfortable and beautiful outdoor furniture is a must. There's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into making an elegant and timeless piece of outdoor furniture. Today we meet with Raul Hernandez of Forever Redwood to discuss what goes into making his amazing redwood pieces.
Raul, thank you so much for being with us. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you for inviting me.
So after months of working on this garden, and we finally have finished everything in the front, one of the last, I would say, like crowning touches or the exclamation point to the garden is looking at this patio, which overlooks everything. So this is the vantage point where most people will enjoy this garden, this front porch. And I think one thing that's overlooked oftentimes is the furniture and the way that we outfit those spaces. Oftentimes it's an afterthought. But we think about all the effort that went into the design and the procurement of the plants and the hundreds of hours of labor that go into making a beautiful garden. And there's a story there. Every great garden has a story. I feel like so should the furniture.
You can pop in some metal furniture or some plastic furniture as an afterthought, but you sit in metal furniture on a hot day and it's not comfortable. It's hot. The wood's always cool. And we've always had an affinity towards wood all through history. So anyone can relate to wood. It's a natural, it fits in naturally with the garden.
So when I started learning about your company, Forever Redwood, what really impressed me is that what you're doing on a much larger scale is a beautiful type of gardening or agriculture. You're growing all of these redwood trees. You're maintaining hundreds of acres of forest, and from there you're making beautiful pergolas, furniture. It's a very sustainable business model, and every piece of furniture has a story. It has a provenance. It was grown there. It was handmade. I think that's amazing.
When I started the company in the 90s, I made the decision that I was going to let our customers get whatever they wanted. And like the chair you're sitting in was designed, the lady gave me a design. And we improved on it because we always make it a thick timber motif, right? Same thing with that one. That was designed by an Italian lady whose husband had passed away. And she named it the Ti Amo bench. And
Yeah.
So we've always been willing to build whatever the customers want. We're not great designers, our customers are. But the big picture is I'm not in the furniture business. I do this as a value-added product line to pay for forest restoration work, which we're in desperate need of. So all this goes towards buying forest land. Right now we're trying to buy a 40-acre piece, just a little bit, because we're a small operation. But the forests in the West are burning. It's a horrendous situation. Some of it is due to global warming. Most of it is due to poor forestry practices.
Sure.
And we need to change that, and there isn't the political will for it.
Raul, how many acres do you have in management or cultivation right now?
Between lands that I own, lands that the company owns, land that friends that are completely aligned with us, we have about 500 acres that we've been managing. But that's compared to the millions and millions of acres that are burning right now. We're a guppy in a big sea. But our company's growing. We grew over 50% this year.
So talk me through the process of the forestry agriculture that you're engaged in.
When we first started in the 90s, the lands that we manage were heavily logged in the early 60s. And they took out most of the redwood and most of the Douglas fir conifers, because that's where the money trees were. And they left the low-quality trees, the tan oak and the madrone and some of the sugar pine. So when we got in there, we had this overgrown forest of small trees packed together, just a kindling pile ready to burn. Instead of having 100 trees per acre that were of all different sizes, as a mature forest would be, you had 500, 700 trees per acre. Most of them are going to die because they're suppressed.
Right.
So we went in and you go through and you do a thinning, a manual thinning. You take out 60, 70% of the trees, but you take out the garbage. You take out the ones that are suppressed, the ones that aren't going to make it, the ones that are already dead. You limb up the branches so you lower the fire hazard. You also take a few trees to pay for it, you know. But basically, when we started, we had 7,000 board feet to the acre of standing timber in 1994. The same land has 16,000 today, and we've harvested it twice. The key is to harvest lightly.
Right.
Take care of it like you care for it.
Indeed. Well, and it is on a grand scale what we do as gardeners. The objectives may be different in certain ways, but it's not terribly different than the way that we look at even a small space like this, where we figure out, like, you know, what are the noble plants that we want to thrive, and, you know, how do we make sure that everything's got enough space, everything has the resources that it needs.
The forest grows naturally. In a 10-year cycle, it's going to add about 35% volume. In a 15-year cycle, which is how we cut, it adds 50, 60%, depending on how old the stand is. We cut 20% of the stand every 15 years, and we skew the cut towards the lower quality trees. We take a couple of good trees, but mostly we take lower quality trees. So the stand's improving. Overall, you're getting better trees, you're getting more volume, and you lower the fire hazard. And you focus on all the stuff that you cut down. You leave all the branches, you leave all the tops, you leave anything that's not worth, you leave it on the forest floor.
Gotcha.
Same reason you do gardening when you leave the mulch. It's the same thing.
Right.
You're building up the soil. You're adding moisture, you're adding habitat, because if you leave a 15 or 18-inch log, that's perfect habitat for rabbits and for, you know, small mammals.
Yeah, I'm mystified when I see people, especially if you have a larger lot, who are removing every single downed leaf from their trees, raking it clean, and it's like, well, so those leaves are that's the fertility for the next generation. It's the fertility for the next season. The tree has a way of recycling itself.
You know, old-time gardeners used to put fencing around a tree,
Right.
and they'd throw all the leaves in there.
Right.
I mean, do they still do that? I mean, I remember as a kid.
You don't see it much.
So, yeah, exactly. You want to leave that material. You don't want a perfectly clean forest because the soil dries up. It's got to have a lot of structure.
Right. It's a continuous loop of agriculture. It's whatever's pulled up from the soil is going to end up in the leaves, and then the leaves fall down and are composted back into the soil.
You asked about planting. We don't do a lot of planting anymore. We still do a little bit, but we used to do a lot. And what we learned is the redwood resprouts, the Douglas fir seeds aggressively. So what you need to do is leave the soil in the best shape you can, and it'll take care of itself. Gardening on a big scale. It is gardening.
Right.
It really is gardening.
No, it absolutely is. And it's that story, Raul, like just understanding what you do that makes this furniture just that much more special. This is also born of your heart and your passion. It's part of 30 plus years of investing yourself in good forestry, good management, and then figure out, you know, how do we make something beautiful that also has that deep connection to the land and to the garden. And that's what I think makes these pieces so incredibly special.
Thank you. Well, a lot of people, especially recently, say that they're buying the furniture to support the forestry work.
Sure.
But when we started 25 years ago, people were like, what's restoration forestry? What's sustainable forestry? They didn't even know what it was.
Right.
Everybody knows what it is now. But the problem is so big. You see, the Indians, up until about 150 years ago, when they basically got kicked off their lands, they burned regularly, all through the West, from Colorado to Washington, all through California. But then we started suppressing fire, and the small trees started to grow.
Right.
And then you started having some horrendous fires starting in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And it's been a downhill battle ever since, because we do the opposite. We encourage small trees. We cut the big trees as much as we can because they're the money trees.
Right.
And you need a forest of trees of all ages. You need them spaced apart, and you got to keep the fuel load down. But it's not about raking the forest floor. It's about getting it down on the ground where it's full of moisture and it won't catch fire. You see, if you get everything down about a foot above the ground, it won't light up. If it's up here, it just stays dry and it's just a kindling pile.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, and we see evidence, you know, I mean, this year especially.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And you can't turn it all into parks. It's privately owned land. It's a mix of private, public, you know, state, local. But everybody who knows is in the industry. The foresters know what good forestry is.
Right.
But it costs money to do it. And unless it's legislated, it's like, hey, you can't harvest timber unless you lower the fire hazard also. It won't get done.
Right. Well, here's to hoping and wishing for a brighter future. And Ro, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed just listening to your passion and seeing the result of your work. You know, I have to believe that these wouldn't be possible without all the effort and the heart that you're putting into everything you do on your acreage every year. And it's definitely represented in the finished product. It's beautiful.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, the furniture is going to age with the garden. This stuff should be here for 20 years, no problem.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll still be here in 20 years.
Here's open.
Thank you.
Each week we travel the country north to south, east to west, visiting some of the most exciting gardens, as well as talking to industry horticulturalists about design principles, new plants, and also how you can be most successful with your home gardens. We also love answering your gardening questions, so visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com.
These moments of beauty and relaxation are brought to you by Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs. Our goal is to leave you free to just enjoy your garden. Proven Winners Flowering Shrubs can be found at local garden centers across the country.
Memphis Wood Fire Grills with our patented IntelliBurn technology and convection oven cooking. Sear a steak, roast vegetables, bake cookies, or smoke meat. Memphis Wood Fire Grills.
Dram has been providing gardeners with professional equipment for over 80 years. Dram products feature 9 water patterns and are designed to nurture your plants with a shower of rain. Dram for lawn and garden, available at garden centers near you.
You have to rely on your gear. The way it feels, the way it does exactly what you need it to do. The F-Pace, how Jaguar makes an SUV.
Launching into a new garden space can be a little overwhelming, but with the right approach and some elbow grease, we can set up our garden for success for years to come. If you have questions about anything you've seen today, visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, even if you're a master gardener, there's always more to learn. So join us next week for more great gardening tips and ideas as we garden smart.